Hi, I'm Tahreem.
Hello, I'm Ron.
Before we start, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm 83 years old. I was born in a village called Aberfan, which is in South Wales. It's a mining village. There's no mining there now. And on October the 21st, 1966, there was a huge disaster in the village. The local children went to school and they were sitting having their names marked in the register. And a huge tsunami-type flood of coal and mud and so on came off the tip, which was lying well above the school, but about a quarter of a mile from the school, slid and destroyed the school and killed 116 children. They'd just gone to sit and were prepared for their lessons, and the teachers who died were very brave because they tried to push the children through the windows, and in doing so they gave their own lives because it was only a matter of seconds. And I went to that school as a boy, but I left that area to work elsewhere. I'll tell you about that later. And last year I went down to Aberfan again. I've been going down there often, but I went to see people I hadn't met for 60 odd years. And we were talking, and I was very sensitive about mentioning the disaster because I know one of them had lost a daughter. So I was very careful about this, but the father mentioned this and raised it, so then we could talk about it a bit more openly. So all that information has been festering inside me like a sore. And one of the things I've been wanting to do is to somehow make a record and a symbol of Aberfan and my experiences there. Although I only lived there for 16 years, which seems very short, nevertheless I still feel I need to do that. And at the moment I've made about 50 little designs. I'm sorry, it's a foot square, you don't know the metric.
Okay.
Yeah, foot square. And these designs have been printed, been photographed, and they appear in the Birmingham Post. And they've also been printed as a story, a narrative about my unspent youth, which is there inside working on me. And I'm also doing, up in the art department, I'm doing a very large painting, which is 28 feet by 8 feet. So it's from virtually the floor to the ceiling. I'm going virtually along that side of the wall. And that one I'm working on now. So that's my main concern in life.
What did you do in the Second World War?
I'll just start by saying I left Aberfan when I was just over 16, about 16 and 2 months. And I went to work for the Admiralty in what had been the largest ironworks in the whole world. And that was the Dallas Ironworks, and it was 14 miles long. Can you imagine that distance in the ironworks? And why it was so big? Because South Wales provided virtually most of the railway lines for the railways of the world. Because you know, in this country, railways were started by George Stephenson and Company. But in fact, the Dallas Ironworks was supplying rails to America. When you see an American train, they're running on rails which were made in South Wales. Now I went to Dallas first of all, which was an Admiralty depot supplying cable for the Navy. And then I was moved from there to Gloucestershire. And in doing so, I came in touch with the English middle class for the first time. I was from a very poor background, and these people, they talked to me in this sort of way, and didn't I see you in Trincomalee? And this was the sort of situation I found myself. And one of the first problems I had, when we were served by the maids at this large table, and there was two sets of cutlery, and I looked at this and I panicked. Where do I start? And there was an older woman, I was 17 and she was 24, sitting next to me, and she nudged me, and I watched her finger go like that, so I understood you work from the outside in.
Oh, okay.
And from there I went into the army, and I was off the coast of West Africa. I was being sent to West Africa, off the coast of West Africa, when the special announcement came on the 6th of August 1945. And this was that an atom bomb, a special bomb, had been dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima on the 6th of August 1945, and killed hundreds of thousands of people and destroyed the city. 3 days later, there was a further announcement that another city, Nagasaki, had also been bombed by an atom bomb, and the war ended by the time I got to the place I was posted to, which was Accra in Ghana, as it is now, but was then called the Gold Coast. And from that point onwards, my life changed utterly. And I stayed in West Africa for just under 2 years, and then came home, and eventually, instead of going back to Aberfan, I came to Birmingham because my father, like probably your father, had a job here.
Oh, okay.
And this is one of the things that happened to me. And I must say, when I came here, I hated the place. But an important thing happened to me. I met my wife,
Oh.
and suddenly life was blooming, and it was a lovely place and so on.
What happened to you in Africa when you landed on the mainland?
Well, when I landed in West Africa, we had to go inland, and eventually we came to Accra, which was the capital of Ghana. But when I went there, it was called the Gold Coast. And I was posted to the headquarters of West Africa Command. And when I got there, I was shown in to see a major in the army, and he told me that I'd been posted there. And he said, by the way, Private Jones, he said, no one below the rank of sergeant is allowed in this unit. So you better put 3 stripes on your arm. And this is what I did. And when I went the following day, I had a day off. I went the following day to the YMCA, which was selling teas and buns and so on for soldiers. I went there, and some of the people who'd been on the troop ship coming out to me were still private. And they said, and excuse my language, bloody hell, Taff, what have you done to yourself? And they looked at my strips. And I was a very small person. And I used to go to the American camp in Accra, where huge bombers were flown across the Atlantic to Accra to be refueled before flying on to attack the Japanese and so on. And the amusing thing here was this huge cinema in the camp, where about 3,000 seats, showed all the latest American films. And I used to go in, and people would say, hey, look at that kid over there with a crown on his arm, because by this time I'd been promoted even further. And I used to get so embarrassed, I'd take the crown off my arm and put it in my pocket before going into the cinema. And that's the sort of thing that happened to me. My life was transformed. Then eventually, my number, in other words, my number for being taken out of the army came up. And I was posted home, and instead of going to South Wales, I went to Birmingham, and that's when I met my wife. And that was, again, the most important meeting of my life, because she was very informed about things, and she used to tell me what I ought to be doing. And I was her little dog, and she would take the bone and throw it to me and say, "Go and get it, boy." And I'd be like the little dog, and I'd come back with the bone in her mouth, and she'd pat me on the head, "Well done." And that's the way my life went. But it was, I was very fortunate in that sense.
What unit were you in?
When I went into the army, I was in fact posted into the infantry. I've been trained in the infantry to cross the Rhine. The war with Germany was still being fought, and the last crossing of the Rhine was about to be made, and I was being trained with hundreds of others, thousands of other soldiers to do the crossing of the Rhine. And there's a program you probably know about called Dad's Army, and in it there's a character who says, "They don't like it of 'em, they don't like it of 'em." Now I heard the man who wrote that Dad's Army, he said that he got that little saying from listening to someone in Colchester, someone in Gloucestershire rather, telling them about this character. Well, I know he got that from a character in Colchester, in the same army base as I was, because he was there 3 months before me. And this man used to chase us. He did it with a lot of fun. He was an older man, and he had a rifle with a bayonet. And when we were doing bayonet practice, he used to run after us and say, and poke us gently in the back, "They don't like it up them, they don't like it up them." So we were all running to sort of keep ahead of him. But apart from that, I then went to South Wales, to my own home regiment. I was there for a while, and I was transferred to the Royal Army Service Corps, which is a regiment that does all the servicing of clerical and other staff and transport lorries for the army and so on. And I was sent on a course to London. And from there, I went to West Africa. So that's when I had this miraculous sort of jump in my fortunes, when I was told to put 3 stripes on my arm. And this was a very amusing sort of situation. And eventually I became what is known as a sergeant major, where I was another step upwards, because I had a more important job to do in the unit. And from there, I spent 2 years in West Africa, more or less, and then came back to UK, to Britain, but not to South Wales, but to Birmingham.
Thank you for talking to me.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you anyway.
You too.
Thank you.